And welcome to this module. Within each module, let's remember that there's some focal points around how to apply these materials back into your personal life. Specifically, we're looking at what vision you have for your personal life, the belief patterns that hold you back from getting you where you want to go, and then using these techniques in an application space. The focal point here needs to be on not learning these techniques quickly, but actually applying them to your life and making some real change. So in this modules, we're going to look at each application and say, well, what is this framework? What is the contextual behaviour that sits over the top of this framework? In plain English, how does this apply to your life? And then how do we link this into your vision and your value systems? At the end of each module, we've given you a workbook. And I'd ask you to sit with the module and then go to the workbooks, go to all of the support materials that are available to you, and actually pick this material up and create the full application of it. Once you've done that, then move on to the next module. And in this way, you'll get the most value out of these sessions. This module looks at meaningful conversations, and very clearly here we're trying to improve relationships. Meaningful conversations we often describe as the 6 steps of having a conversation with somebody. And the client at this point will say to us, I just don't feel heard. I'm talking to people and my partner can't hear me, or my business partners can't hear me. I try to sell something and my client can't hear me. And it's just not getting down to a depth of conversation, a real conversation. And we've had just some wonderful people write back to us and say, I took this and I went home to my daughter and my 12-year-old daughter, and for the first time we had this great conversation, and she said to me, wow, Dad, that was just amazing. This is about meaningful conversations with people. And of course, the more meaningful the conversation, the deeper the relationship. And so if you want better relationships, well, they're deeper relationships. And to achieve that, it's all about having a meaningful conversation. When we teach this, and what we say is, let's look at how a normal conversation between two people unfolds. So, husband and wife, my wife says to me last night, can we chat about where we're going on vacation next? My usual response is, sure, what do we want to talk about? And she'll say, well, where are we going? And then all of a sudden we're into a conversation. Now, 3 or 4 minutes later, there's a disconnect in that conversation. And we're like, well, I'm not sure what you want to talk to me about, and we're not happy, and we don't know where we want to go. And if there's a breakdown in that communication, then what we're explaining is that we've lost the meaning of the conversation. So meaningful being we've lost the meaning behind the conversation. And so there's a format or a flow attached to conversations, which we just call the 6 steps of a conversation. And a couple of simple points here changes the dynamic completely between two parties. And again, remember the applications here. You can apply this in business, you can apply this to your career, you can apply this at home, friends, family, children, and so on. So let's look at step 1. Well, step 1 of every conversation starts with, can we chat about a topic? And so, we call that an agenda. Now, what generally happens is that agendas are set between two people in what we call a global context. And so my wife says to me, can we talk about a vacation? Now, what we're really talking about here is the end result of something. And so, it's called the global context or the global agenda. Often I say, someone goes to the bank and says, can I have a mortgage? The bank manager says, what do you want to chat about? Well, I'd like a mortgage. And you see what we've spoken about again is the end result. We haven't spoken about what we're going to talk about in this meeting yet. What we've spoken about is the end result. And in most business conversations between, someone wanting to buy something, you go to your accountant and the accountant says, how can I help you? Well, I want to do my tax for the year. Well, we're not going to achieve that in this meeting. That's the end result of something. You go to a shop and a person walks up to you and says, can I help? And you go, yeah, I'd like to buy a suit. I'd like to buy a dress. You're talking about the end result. So that's global. Where conversations get lost then is that we don't take the time out to get specific. So there's a thing called the specific agenda that we ask people to slow down and capture the specific agenda. What happens is we tend to bypass that and go straight to, okay, well, what do we want to do with the vacation? Where are we going and who's going? You want to buy a dress? Great, which one? The bank manager says, you want a mortgage? Sure, how much? And they dive straight into the detail of the mortgage or the dress or the vacation, rather than saying, well, let's slow down, what do we really want to talk about here? So with the vacation, what I could have said to my wife was, okay, great, specifically, what do we want to talk about around vacation? Now, all of a sudden, if her response is, well, we haven't had a vacation for 6 months, when are we having the next one? What she really wants to talk about is calendars and diaries and times and when are we actually going to be available to have something in the conversation. Often what will occur once we start going that path is what she's really saying is we're not spending enough time together. And so a meaningful conversation is, are we spending enough time together, not when are we going on a vacation. If we want meaningful conversations, we get to the real conversations. And having real conversations between people is where we connect people together and where relationships improve enormously. Just me responding with, well, let's go on one in September, just isn't going to help in that situation where the real conversation is, can we spend more time together, please? The bank manager should say, great, you want a mortgage. Why do you need a mortgage? What's the real conversation here? Oh, well, we need a mortgage because we've just had 2 more children and we're bursting out of our current house and we need another house. Well, great, tell me all about that. You want to buy a dress at the shop or you want to buy a suit at the shop. Great, tell me about the suit. Why do you need a new suit? Oh, I've just been promoted and I need a new suit, or I'm going for an interview and I need a new suit. All of a sudden we're into a real conversation here with somebody. And so the bullet points here are, 1, we get an agenda. First step is global agenda. Slow down and say to somebody, fantastic, and specifically what do we need to talk about? Or what is it that we really got to get into a conversation here around? Lots of ways of asking the same specifics, but it's tearing down. So often we'll say to people, ask the question, what else? And so that conversation between Dad and the 12-year-old daughter just literally occurred last week. And he emailed me back and he said, I did exactly that. My 12-year-old daughter came to me and said, you know, Dad, can we have a chat? And Dad said, yeah, sure, what was it about? And you know, the child wanted to talk about being able to go away on an excursion with the school. And Dad said, what else do you want to talk to me about? And the 12-year-old said, oh, I haven't spoken to you about this. And Dad said, what else do you want to talk to me about? And all of a sudden, the dad was talking about 20 topics, not this one. And the 12-year-old felt heard. And the 12-year-old got all of the topics out. And Dad's connection with her and what was going on in her life was amazingly different. And so this one simple question of, is there anything else we need to talk about? What else can we talk about around the vacation or around the mortgage? Just brings us into more meaningful conversation. The second step in the 6 steps is all about what we call the position. And so from what position are we having this conversation? So in my wife's example, if she says, can we talk about a vacation? Then my response has to be, well, great. You know, what's the position of the vacation? Is it that you're feeling frustrated? Is it that you just come off of vacation and you're ready for the next one? If you can get an energetic connection here with what this entire conversation is about, then you understand the position from which the other party is talking to you. And so in this conversation, if my wife had said, we haven't been on a vacation in 6 months and I'm tired and I need a break, well, that's held in a completely different context to, well, we came off a vacation only 4 weeks ago and we had so much fun, can we just go and do it again? Now, the rest of the conversation is held in a different space if we understand the energy from which we're holding this conversation. Now, the third step is what we call the fact find, or in other words, what's the detail of this conversation? And it's the part, as I said, that the bank manager tends to rush into. Oh, you want a mortgage, how much? The accountant says, oh, you want to open up a business, well, tell me when you want to open that up. You talk to an estate agent about selling a house. You know, an estate agent walks into your house and says, how can I help? Well, we want to sell the house. And the first question they ask is, well, when? When do you want to sell this house? And how many bedrooms has it got? And they go into the detail. And so we need to get to this after we do the more meaningful conversation at the start. And this is called the fact find. Now, the piece that's missing here is what I call the feel find. So the bank manager will ask you all the questions about how big a mortgage and how many bedrooms and what's the house worth, etc. I'll ask the wife, where do you want to go on a vacation and when do we need to go? Now, but the real question is the feel find. And the feel find is what's the energy around all of that information. If you look at the video called Think, Feel, Know, what we're trying to do here is go out of the thinking and now into the feeling. And we're trying to connect now into the energetic piece between the two people having a conversation. And this feeling connection creates a more meaningful conversation. And so if at this point I say, great, tell me about how you're feeling about vacations. If my wife says, well, the last 3 were difficult and long and they were hard to get to, there's just bad energy, bad vibration in this conversation. And that swings it around slightly differently for me. If she says, last 3 vacations were amazing and I want to make sure that the next vacation is as good as those and how do we top the last one we went to and so on. Well, again, it puts me into a different vibration. So the feel find creates the connectivity in the more meaningful conversation. 4th step is let's resolve the topic that we're talking about. So now we're down into, well, where are we going on vacation? Let's look at the brochures, let's Google stuff, let's explore stuff, let's chat about all the detail. And then the 5th step, of course, we describe as the summary of all of that. And it's a really important step. Quite often people will just go, okay, well, we're done. And then they walk away. And a week later, I'm chatting to my wife and saying, did you organise the vacation? And she's saying, no, I thought you were doing it, and you've got to break down again. So these last 2 steps are really important. So the summary piece is to literally say, okay, we've just chatted about the vacation. Let's just get the key points down now around what we're doing. So we need to go on a vacation because we haven't had one for a while. Therefore, we need to go on a vacation without the children. We don't want to be away from the children for any more than 3 days. So this vacation needs to be fairly close to home because we don't want to spend 48 hours on planes. And so you're getting the bullet points down around the topic. And that creates agreement. And once we have agreement at step 5, then breakdowns in communication afterwards just dissolve. Step 6 now is all about who's doing what and what are the next steps. Again, most people just bypass this thinking the conversation is done. So I just ask you again to slow down to create a more meaningful conversation. And so with my wife, this would be, okay, so we're going on vacation for 3 days, close to home. It needs to be done within a month to capture our energy. Who's organising this? Are we outsourcing it to the agent? Are we doing it ourselves? Who's got time? How much is the budget? Who's organising the money? And so on and so on. And once we've got this task list tucked away and we've got agreement around who's doing what, no more disagreements between 2 people. And so let's look at the 3 key points for creating more meaningful conversations. And let's remember that the focus here is about creating better relationships. The first step is, in the conversation, let's make sure we get that specific agenda. Tearing down point number 2 and creating the what else do we need to talk about, and specifically what do we need to talk about, is going to build a depth in relationships and a depth in communication and conversations that most people don't achieve. It's that depth that creates connection between people. It's that depth that creates the more meaningful conversation. And that allows you to build amazing relationships at both home and in the work environment. And step number 3 is, when we're doing the detail of the conversation, when we're exploring the vacation, when we're exploring the mortgage, when we're talking about the children, when at business we're trying to work out a strategy and so on, the thing that's often missed is what we call the feel find. And so I'd highly encourage you at this point to look at the module called Think, Feel, Know. This is about moving from the thinking and moving into the feeling and energetically connecting with what's really going on. And it's the real conversation and the really going on that creates more meaningful conversations. Thanks for watching. We really hope you've enjoyed this series of modules and frameworks. Of course, they're all designed to help you do 3 key things. better wealth in your life, better health for you personally, and of course to improve all of those relationships. And we'll see you next time.